The first scratch of metal against my front door echoed through the silent house. I didn't move. I didn't call out. I didn't even turn on the lights. Because I already knew who was outside. It was Christmas Eve, 9 p.m. The entire neighborhood glowed with warm lights and happy families gathering around dinner table. But my house sat completely dark, exactly the way I wanted it. The silence wasn't fear. It was preparation. Every room inside my home had been carefully arranged hours earlier. Every light stayed off. Every curtain remained closed. Every detail was exactly where it needed to be. Outside, I recognized the headlights before the engine even stopped. I'd spent 36 years memorizing my family's habits. I knew the way my father's truck idled. I knew the sound of my mother's nervous cough. And I knew my younger brother Travis's laugh. That loud, confident laugh he only used when he believed he'd already won. Then another vehicle pulled into the driveway. A stranger stepped out carrying a heavy black toolbox. Not a moving company, not a contractor, a locksmith. The scratching against my lock began. Metal against metal, patient, professional. Like the person outside believed this house already belonged to someone else. I sat perfectly still in the darkness and let him continue. Because tonight wasn't the night they were stealing my house. Tonight was the night they destroyed their own lives. My name is Charlotte. I'm 36 years old. And for nearly 20 years, my family made sure there was never a place for me. Not at Christmas, not at birthdays, not at family dinners, not even in family photographs. People imagine abuse as yelling, or violence, or cruel words shouted across a room. My family never needed any of that. They mastered something much quieter. They simply acted as if I mattered a little less than everyone else. And somehow, that hurts even more. If you've ever felt like the extra chair, the forgotten invitation, or the person who always gave more love than they received, then stay with me. Because this story isn't just about revenge. It's about finally realizing your worth, after spending a lifetime believing someone else got to decide it. The first Christmas I truly remember, I was 8 years old. Our dining table wasn't enormous, but it wasn't small either. Every December my mother transformed it into something that belonged inside a holiday magazine. Fresh pine branches, candles, the expensive china, cloth napkins folded perfectly. Everything looked beautiful, except for one thing. There weren't enough chairs. At first, I assumed someone simply forgot, so the first counted them: one for Dad, one for Mom, one for Travis, Grandma, Grandpa, my aunt, my uncle, my little cousin. I counted again, then again, 8 chairs, 9 people. I stood quietly in the doorway wearing my little church dress, waiting for someone else to notice. My mother looked at me, then looked at the table. She smiled gently, the kind of smile adults use when they're about to disappoint a child without sounding cruel. "We only have room for so many people, sweetheart." She handed me a plate, then pointed toward the kitchen. "I'll bring dessert later." That Christmas, I ate dinner alone on a stool beside the stove, listening to everyone else laugh together. I kept telling myself, next year will be different. Kids are amazing at explaining away pain. We convince ourselves that accidents happen, that adults don't mean it, that someday, someone will finally remember us. Next year came, still no chair. Then another year, still no chair. Eventually, the guests changed. Some relatives stopped coming. Others passed away. The table actually had more space than before. Yet somehow, there was still never room for me. Years later, I finally understood something that changed everything. The problem had never been the number of chairs. The problem was me. People always ask, were your parents abusive? No, not in the obvious ways. No screaming, no beatings, no insults, no broken bones, no terrifying nights. Honestly, sometimes I wish there had been, because obvious cruelty gives you permission to leave. Quiet rejection keeps you hoping. Every Christmas morning, I'd kneel beside the tree before everyone woke up. I loved reading the gift tags. Dad, Mom, Travis, Grandma, cousins, friends. I checked every package twice, hoping maybe I'd missed one. I never had. Later in the afternoon, after everyone finished opening their presents, my mother would eventually hand me something practical: socks, a sweater, school supplies. Then she'd smile apologetically. "We didn't want to spoil you." Funny thing about being forgotten, you eventually stop expecting to be remembered. By 12, I could cook breakfast, wash clothes, pack lunches, balance grocery money. Nobody taught me. Nobody asked. I simply realized if I didn't take care of myself, no one else would. I thought maybe if I became useful enough, helpful enough, perfect enough, they'd finally save me a seat. Children blame themselves for things adults create. I spent years trying to earn love that should have been free. There was one object inside our house nobody was allowed to touch: a small silver picture frame. It always sat on my mother's dresser, turned slightly toward the wall. One afternoon, when I was around 10, I picked it up. Inside wasn't a family portrait. There wasn't even a person, only a tiny yellow hospital blanket, carefully folded. My mother's hands holding it, nothing else. No baby, no face. Just the blanket. Before I could ask another question, my mother gently removed it from my hands. "Not now." That was all she said. She didn't yell. She didn't get angry. She simply placed it back exactly where it always stayed, facing away. Every December, she became quieter. She'd stare through windows for hours. Coffee growing cold, dinner forgotten. My father walked more softly during those weeks. like he was afraid of disturbing something invisible. I never understood it. I only knew Christmas changed my mother, long before it ever reached me. Years later, I would finally learn the truth behind that yellow blanket. The truth explained everything, but it excused nothing. The day after my 18th birthday, I left. Not dramatically. No shouting. No confrontation. No emotional goodbye. I packed one duffel bag, a toothbrush, a few clothes, my high school diploma. $400 worth of an old Corolla waited outside. Everything else I owned fit inside a single bag. Mom stood at the sink. Dad read the newspaper. Travis barely looked away from the television. Call when you arrive. That was my goodbye. I drove 3 hours before finally pulling into a tiny roadside diner. I ordered coffee I couldn't really afford, then cried harder than I ever had in my life. Not because I was leaving, because nobody cared that I had. That afternoon, I made myself a promise. Someday, I would own a house. A real home, one with my name on every document, one nobody could take away, one where nobody could decide there wasn't room for me anymore. Back then, it sounded impossible. But impossible has never scared someone who spent her whole life surviving. That promise would eventually change everything. That promise became the reason I woke up every morning. I didn't have parents to fall back on, no college fund, no inheritance, no safety net. If I failed, there was nobody coming to rescue me. So I worked harder than anyone around me. My first business wasn't glamorous. It was a yellow cleaning bucket, a handful of cheap supplies from the dollar store, and an old Corolla that barely survived every winter. My very first customer was a single mother working 2 jobs. She apologized because her home was messy. I smiled and told her not to worry. 6 hours later, when I finished cleaning, she stood in the kitchen with tears in her eyes. It hasn't looked like this in years. She recommended me to 2 friends. Those friends recommended me to 4 more, then 8, then 16. Word spread. For almost 2 years, my car became my bedroom. Some nights I slept in parking lots wrapped in a thrift store blanket. I showered at a cheap gym. Every dollar I earned went into 3 envelopes. Gas, business, house. Nothing else mattered. Growing up unwanted had taught me one dangerous lesson. Failure was never an option. So I became obsessed with excellence. I cleaned places nobody else noticed. Baseboards, ceiling fans, window tracks. I fixed mistakes customers never even saw. I worked while sick, worked on weekends, worked every Christmas. Not because I loved working, because I had nowhere else to be. Years passed. The bucket became a business. The business became a company. By 30, I owned several service vans, a growing team, hundreds of loyal clients. People trusted me with the keys to their homes. The same girl who had never been trusted with a chair at her own family's table was now trusted with million-dollar homes. Life has a strange sense of humor. My family knew almost nothing about my success. They never asked. Every holiday they celebrated without me. Every Christmas, I still found myself staring at lights through store windows, wondering what it felt like to truly belong. Meanwhile, Travis kept failing upward. Every business collapsed. Every investment disappeared. Every bad decision became my parents' emergency. They paid his debts, bought his vehicles, covered his rent, refinanced their own home more than once. Every time he fell, someone caught him. He never learned consequences. He only learned entitlement. One afternoon, my cousin Patty called. She always knew the latest family gossip. "Charlotte," she sighed, "your brother's in serious trouble." This time, the number wasn't small. Nearly $90,000. Personal guarantees, business loans, collection notices. Everything had finally caught up with him. My parents had nothing left to give. Their savings were gone. Their retirement was disappearing. And then, Patty casually mentioned something else. "I accidentally told Aunt Linda about your new house." My stomach tightened, because family news always traveled faster than good intentions. 3 weeks later, my phone rang. It was my mother, the first non-holiday phone call I'd received from her in years. She sounded warm, almost affectionate. "Charlotte, I hear you bought a beautiful home." There it was. Not, "How have you been?" Not, "I miss you." The house. Always the house. "We'd love to come visit." 2 days later, Travis texted. "How many bedrooms? How much did you pay? Is the mortgage expensive?" Then, one final question. "Whose name is the house under?" I stared at those words. Normal people ask questions. Desperate people investigate assets. For the first time, my instincts screamed at me. Something wasn't right. I didn't answer. Instead, I called my real estate attorney. Her name was Ruth Calloway. After listening quietly, she asked one simple question. "Has anyone suddenly become interested in your property?" "Yes," she sighed, then explained something I'd never heard before. "Deed fraud. Someone forges your signature, files fake paperwork, transfers ownership on paper. And by the time you discover it, your nightmare has already begun. The worst part? It usually isn't strangers," Ruth said. "It's family." My blood ran cold, because nobody knew my family better than I did. Ruth helped me register for my county's property fraud alert program. If anyone recorded anything against my home, I'd know immediately. It wouldn't stop the fraud, but it would stop them from surprising me. Then she gave me one final piece of advice. "Don't tell anyone you've done this." So I didn't. I smiled during phone calls, acted grateful, answered politely, played exactly the role they expected. The quiet, naive, lonely daughter. Inside, I was preparing. Weeks later, Patty called again. Charlotte, they're inviting you to Christmas. I almost laughed. 20 years, without a chair. Suddenly there was room for me. No, there wasn't room for me. There was room for my house. That same evening, Travis sent another message. You should really keep important documents safe. Another. Where do you keep your deed? Another. Do you have a safe? People reveal themselves when they think you're too foolish to notice. I screenshotted everything. Every text, every voicemail, every strange question, every fake apology, every forced conversation. Evidence. Quietly, patiently, I built a file. December arrived. The invitations became more frequent. The kindness became almost unbelievable. My mother actually said something I'd waited 20 years to hear. Charlotte, there's always been a place for you. No, there hadn't. If there had, an 8-year-old girl wouldn't have eaten Christmas dinner alone beside a stove. People don't rewrite 20 years overnight. Not unless they need something. Then, my mother accidentally revealed the truth. It's such a large house for one person. She laughed softly. It really belongs to the whole family. Those words echoed inside me. The whole family. Not your home, our home. That's when I finally understood. They weren't planning a visit. They were planning possession. I wanted to confront them immediately. Instead, I called Ruth. If you accuse them now, they'll disappear, she warned. You need them to commit the crime. Waiting felt impossible, but she was right. So, I waited, pretended, smiled, answered texts, played along, until one Wednesday afternoon, my phone buzzed. Property fraud. Alert, a new document has been recorded against your property. I opened the email. Quit claim deed. Grantor, Charlotte Booth. Grantee, Travis Booth. According to county records, I had just signed away my own house. Except, I hadn't. Someone had forged my name. Someone had stolen everything I'd spent 18 years building. And somehow, instead of panic, I felt peace. Because they had finally crossed the line, the trap had officially closed. The only thing left was catching them walking straight into it. The morning after receiving the fraud alert, I walked into the county recorder's office. I requested a certified copy of the deed. A few minutes later, the clerk handed me the document. I stared at my own name, Charlotte Booth. Only, it wasn't my signature. Someone had studied it, copied it, and forged it just well enough to fool a stranger. But they couldn't fool me. That single sheet of paper confirmed everything. For 20 years, they had erased me emotionally. Now, they were trying to erase me legally. I folded the document carefully, placed it inside my folder, and drove straight to the police station. Detective Ray Foster listened without interrupting. I showed him everything: the forged deed, the screenshots, the strange phone calls, the questions about my documents, the sudden invitation, the desperate debt. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair, then quietly said, Charlotte, I've investigated family fraud for over 20 years. I've rarely seen someone this prepared. I smiled slightly. I own a business. I learned a long time ago. Records never lie. After reviewing everything, Detective Foster looked directly at me. There's only one thing left. We let them believe they're winning. Christmas Eve arrived, exactly as predicted. I parked my car 3 streets away. Every light inside my house stayed off. From the outside, it looked abandoned, lonely, empty, exactly the way my family had always imagined my life. But inside, the house was anything but empty. Detective Foster waited quietly inside. 2 uniformed officers stood out of sight. My attorney had prepared every legal document. A local newspaper reporter sat upstairs with a camera. Every person who needed to witness the truth was already inside. Only one group didn't know it. My family. At exactly 9 p.m., headlights rolled slowly into the driveway. One vehicle, then another. Doors opened. I recognized every voice. My father, my mother, Travis, Megan, and one unfamiliar man, the locksmith. The metal pick slid into my front door. Scratch, scratch, scratch. Nobody inside moved. Then, click, the deadbolt unlocked. My front door slowly opened. Travis stepped inside first, holding a folder in his hand. The forged deed. He laughed, a loud, confident, victorious laugh. See? I told you she'd be gone. This place belongs to us now. Megan immediately started giving instruction. Replace every lock tonight. Tomorrow we'll move everything in. Once we're living here, nobody can touch us. My mother slowly looked around the house. It's beautiful, she whispered. Then Travis said something I'll never forget. She never deserved a house like this. She never belonged anywhere. Silence. I reached over and turned on the lamp beside me. The entire room exploded with light. Every face froze. Every smile disappeared. Then Detective Foster stepped forward, badge already in his hand. Behind him, 2 officers. Upstairs, camera shutters clicked. The reporter captured everything, every expression, every lie, every second. Travis looked completely confused. Charlotte? What is this? I stood slowly, calm, steady, holding my folder. Then I smiled. Merry Christmas. You can put the forged deed down now. It's evidence. Everything changed. Travis exploded. This is my house. I have the papers. You set me up? Detective Foster interrupted calmly. No, Mr. Booth. You committed felony forgery. You filed fraudulent county records. You attempted illegal possession of private property. You're under arrest? The handcuffs clicked shut. The sound echoed through my hallway. The same hallway my family once believed would belong to them forever. Megan stood completely silent. She already understood. The game was over. Then, my mother looked at me, crying. Charlotte, please. We're family. For 36 years. I'd imagined this moment, thought maybe I'd scream, maybe I'd cry, maybe I'd finally ask, why didn't you love me? Instead, I quietly answered, there was always enough room at the table. You just never saved a seat for me. I looked around my own home, then back at her. Tonight, I set the table myself, and I invited the police. Nobody spoke, not even my mother. For the first time in my life, she had no words left. As officers escorted Travis outside, my father remained behind. He slowly sat on the bottom stair. An exhausted old man, not angry, just broken. After several minutes, he finally whispered, I knew, every Christmas. I knew it was wrong. I looked at him. Then why didn't you stop it? His eyes filled with tears. Because your mother never recovered. He finally told me about the baby, the daughter they lost before I was born, the tiny yellow hospital blanket, the photograph, the silence, every December. My mother had spent her entire life mourning one daughter, while slowly forgetting another. The truth explained everything, but it changed nothing. I quietly answered, she lost one daughter, then spent 20 years pretending she lost two. My father lowered his head. He couldn't argue, because he knew I was right. Months later, the court voided the forged deed. My home officially remained mine. Travis accepted a plea deal. Megan testified. Both ended up with felony convictions. The $90,000 debt still existed. Only now, it came with criminal records. The local newspaper published the entire story. Dozens of homeowners signed up for fraud alerts after reading it. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't destroying someone's life. It's stopping them from destroying someone else's. I never spoke to my mother again. My father still writes letters. Sometimes I read them. Sometimes I don't. Forgiveness isn't something people deserve simply because they're family. It's something they earn. The following Christmas, I finally bought the dining table I dreamed about since I was 18. A long oak table. Exactly 12 chairs. Every chair filled. My employees. My neighbors. Friends who became family. Even Patty. People who actually wanted me there. Before dinner, I looked around the room. Every chair occupied. Nobody forgotten. Nobody left standing in the kitchen. Nobody counting places. For the first time in my life, I understood something. Family isn't the people who give you life. Family is the people who make room for yours. That Christmas, I didn't feel like the forgotten child anymore. I felt like the woman who finally built the life she had been waiting for since she was 8 years old. And just before everyone sat down, I reached over, locked my own front door, looked around the room, and smiled. Because this time, every single chair had been set on purpose. If this story touched your heart, remember this. Never beg for a seat at someone else's table. Build your own. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more emotional family drama stories every week. And tell me in the comments, what would you have done if your own family tried to steal your home?